you've been working on some bipartisan efforts involving the moon and also possibly Mars, and then finally the 39A Launchpad Space Initiative. So we can start with the moon, then go to Mars, and then you can come back and talk about that launch pad if you'd like. So as far as this bipartisan effort to get to the moon, obviously this being the Space Coast, there's a much higher interest than most places you'd probably find. Everybody here has an eye on the space program, what NASA's doing. We're all recovering from the blow that we took from the cancellation of Constellation. So now, can you explain to us kind of this renewed effort to put the moon back in the focus here?
Yes, I have reintroduced the Real Space Act, which directs NASA to return to the moon by 2022.
Okay.
And I had introduced that during the last Congress. My prime co-sponsor was Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the incoming head of the DCCC, the person charged with eliminating me from Congress.
Okay.
And my prime co-sponsor this time is the very liberal gentlewoman from Texas, Sheila Jackson Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've made this a bipartisan issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a partisan issue.
Mm-hmm.
And we think it's necessary to go back to the moon for a number of reasons. I mean, there's volumes on reasons why we should do that.
Mm-hmm.
The first man to walk on the moon, the last man to walk on the moon, the commander of the last module, and all the eminent scientists we've had testify before the committee has stated the importance of returning to the moon as a critical stepping stone in our ultimate destiny of getting to Mars.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and also that launch pad initiative, the 39A launch pad. We know there's obviously a lot of unused real estate, so to speak, out there in Kennedy Space Center. And for the average Joes around here who may be looking at that and thinking, why don't we have commercial companies out here utilizing that space, utilizing that area when it's obviously been cleared for launches before? Now, is there an effort to help some of those commercial companies come in, some of those private companies come in and utilize that space?
Yes, there is. NASA is working with them more, and I filed legislation actually to legislatively structure the same possibilities we did with DoD
Mm-hmm.
with NASA.
Okay.
You know, NASA has a history of exploring space and the weather and life sciences and not managing their assets,
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly,
Mm-hmm.
and most particularly not managing unused assets.
Mm-hmm.
And we would like to turn those unused assets into usable assets.
Mm-hmm.
And so NASA right now has gone through a competitive bidding process and is in the process of awarding the use of one of the launch pads. It's under contest by another bidder who did not win. And my view is to, not look back, but to move forward. I don't want to have a 2-year delay while we argue about who shot John.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, NASA gave it their best shot. Now let's move forward and start employing some people and launching some rockets out there.
Right. And you were part of the Apollo program, were you not?
I was an inspector on the 3rd stage.
Okay. So you know what it's like to be part of a very ambitious and important mission or program like Apollo. Do you still sense that NASA has the ability to get back to its glory days, so to speak, if the right pieces are in place?
Yeah, and the most important right piece is funding.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You compare the percentage of gross domestic product to today, and they're getting about, what, a dime on the dollar
Mm-hmm.
of what they got during the heydays of Apollo.
Mm-hmm.
Given we were in a Cold War with the Russians then, and the Russians had just launched Sputnik, which, had scared America about this weird-looking object that looked like it could have guns coming out, who knows what, But the glue that brought everything together was President John F. Kennedy, and his speech, "Why go to the moon," still gives me chills
Mm-hmm.
when I listen to it or read it.
Mm-hmm.
He enumerates the reasons for going to the moon, and says quite bluntly that we're not doing this because it's easy. We're doing it because it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
and great countries accomplish difficult things. And
Right.
the guy was so, wonderful. And,
Mhm.
and just to dispel a rumor while we're talking, just
Sure.
between me and you, about a dozen years ago, when they released some of President Kennedy's papers,
Mhm.
there was a big write-up that said, Kennedy really didn't care about space.
Mhm.
He just wanted to beat the Russians to the moon.
Mhm.
And I tried to find evidence of that online for years and couldn't do it.
Mhm.
And finally, when I was reading the comments, which I try not to do, that some malcontent wrote about me, talking about what an idiot I was, to an article they saw in Florida Today, they referenced this link to the transcript and the audio of the statement
Mhm.
in which Kennedy allegedly expressed non-interest in space and only a desire to beat the Russians. And that led me to the link. And if you listen to the audio or read the transcript, you had the top contractors in the Oval Office trying to convince the president to spend an extra $400 million on the Apollo program. And he said, I really don't want to spend the extra $400 million, which is like $4 billion or $5 billion today,
Mhm.
unless it means we can beat the Russians. But he didn't stop there. He said, I believe space is important. It's a matter of national security and yada, 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 yada. But somehow everybody just stopped everything after that and
Right.
inferred that he really didn't care about space and he wasn't the visionary that so many of us,
Mhm.
Worshipped him for almost.
Right. Right.
In fact, he was.
Mhm.
But again, somebody chose to take something out of context. And I know you'd never do that, but
Right.
somebody did. And
Right.
you can Google Kennedy really didn't care about space or something, and you get like 500,000 hits
Right.
that people are repeating this wrongful comment.
Well, that's very interesting, and there's always people out there who want to be the revisionist historians.
Hello.
Yeah. So that's really an interesting factoid there, and we're glad that you could clear that up for us. And, here on the Space Coast, we have nothing but respect for that man's vision, because let's face it, without that vision, we wouldn't have probably half the people we have here now.
He
So,
brought the country together, too.
Yeah.
I mean, he really, he energized the whole country. When I went out there as a young man, I was going to college full-time at night. I would have worked for free. I'd have worked for half.
Mhm.
The wages were good,
Mhm.
but the whole nation was involved in this.
Right.
There was a sense of pride. Nobody wore jeans to work or sneakers.
Mhm.
I mean, it was this is an important mission.
Mhm.
This is important to the country,
Mhm.
and we are going to get this done.
Mhm.
And everybody felt like it. And the cashier at the supermarket felt a part of it, and the guy selling cars felt a part of it. It just everybody was in.
Right.
And wow, how we yearn to have that same element of glue holding us all together and move us all in the same direction with at least one shared goal.
Right.
To benefit the United States of America, to benefit our everyday lives, to benefit science, to benefit the next generation. I like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Mhm.
I've listened to him a couple times. I mean, I think he's just the greatest voice for space that we have today, the astrophysicist. And he made a point the last time I heard him speak, and I don't know if it's on one of his many YouTube videos,
Right.
but when I was listening to him speak in Washington before he appeared before one of our committees, he said, you go through the whole budget. You go through the whole budget. He said, the only thing that this country really spends money on for the next generation that we don't expect necessarily to benefit from right now is space.
Mhm. Yep.
And I think a measure of one's motives boils down to the old cliche of someone willing to plant trees, the shade from which they'll never expect to enjoy.
Mhm.
And that's our space program.
Yep. Well, we couldn't agree with you more, and we appreciate all the hard work you've done to not only preserve current space jobs here, but hopefully build and bring a lot of those jobs back as we go toward the future here on the Space Coast. And we thank you again for taking the time with us today, and wish you the best of luck, safety traveling back home, and just great to see you here back on the Space Coast. Thanks again.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep.